Well, greetings and salutations, test takers. This is Series 7 Guru coming to you from my off-grid studio, getting our kicks on historic Route 66. We'll take care of some housekeeping, and then we'll see if I can help you with any content. Have some fun, have some fun. Oh, that's not good. Looks like I got double voice going on here. There we go. Um, I had about 20 people waiting in the waiting room, and for some reason the software system I've been using for years got sold out, and I had to start over again. So hopefully they'll find us, but it's aggravating because I knew when they got bought out, I said, oh, can't you just leave things alone? And then they doubled the price. I feel like a lobster in the pot, right? Because they doubled the price for the software, and I thought, do I want to deal with changing? And so they got me for one more year. But then when I find out my stuff is messed up again, I'm like, oh my goodness, I got to get rid of these guys. All right. Well, we're there every Tuesday, 5 p.m. Arizona time. Arizona doesn't change its time. So right now we're in the mountain time zone. So we match up with that. Uh-oh, looks like even my ticker just went off. But let's check the ticker, see if the ticker's working. It'll be one of those days, huh? Anyways, tell us what exam you're taking and where you're joining us from. And that would be helpful. Just see we get people near and far joining our live streams. If you're looking for a free supplement to your paid study materials, there's nothing better than my YouTube channel. It's completely free, no upsells, no channel memberships, completely free. And I've organized that in a series playlist. So the idea is you find your series, SIE, for example. There's 4 playlists. They're in suggested watch order. The videos are in suggested watch order. So you'd start with playlist 1. Usually the first playlist is a podcast, which gives you an overview of the entire exam. Would I like you to read the book cover to cover without taking notes to kind of get the lay of the land? I would. I understand some people aren't going to do that. So what I hope is maybe you'll watch that so you know what it all looks like in total. Then we have some lectures, SIE cram course. Then we usually have some practice tests and practice exams, things like that. Now, if you're looking for a particular topic, please, please, please use the search bar. It's okay. I'm going to get asked tonight to answer questions I've answered many times that live on in video form forever. But if you put in the channel search bar like accrued interest or accretion or margin, all that content will magically appear. So that's if you're looking for a particular topic. So if you want to binge, use the playlist. If you're looking for a particular topic, use the search bar. Yeah, if you do have a question for me tonight, it would be helpful if you tell me what exam you're taking, followed by the question SIE or capital S7 or S6 with the question. I can usually get that based on your, the type of question, but there's a lot of overlap, and the depth of what they ask certain questions is different. So that would be helpful. Not necessary, but helpful. You're not alone. We have lots of communities. We have Reddit communities. We have a subreddit for the Series 6. We have a subreddit for SIE and Series 7. We have a subreddit for 9, 10s, and 24s, and you can find those on the Reddit. We also have a Facebook community. Baby brokers doing hat tricks. Baby brokers doing hat tricks. Baby brokers, a term of endearment for rookies in the securities industry, and a hat trick is 3 successes in a row. Think SIE 766 or SIE 663. We have over 3,400 members. It's the most active Facebook community out there. So join our test-taking tribe over there on Facebook if you're a Facebook person. All right. If you win the coaching call tonight, you do not win a tutoring session at a date and time of your choice. What you win is a coaching call, and you go to deantenneytutoring.setmore.com, and you'll see a tab, and you can claim that winning. Everything on my booking page is not free, right? So it's the opposite of the YouTube channel. But there are some things that are free. The coaching call for drawing winners is free. We just did a weekly Q&A jam session the other day. That's free, so you can find that tab. If the tab's not there, it means I haven't put it up yet, or when it reaches its maximum size, which I think is 15 or 20, it disappears off the tab. We have a book club. That would be in the class tab once I decide on what our next read was. Our last read was The Crash. We've had some good reads. Shoe Dog, which was about Phil Knight, Michael Dell. We read both Ricketts and Schwab's memoirs. So as soon as I find a title, I'll put that tab up. If you have some suggestions, I'm more than happy to listen to them. If you're looking for a paid supplement, If you don't have a Kaplan Q Bank, I highly, highly recommend it. For Series 7, for example, with my 15% discount code, you get over 3,600 performance opportunities. That's why I call practice questions. Wow. And you can customize it. You can use it as a performance tracker to find remediation. That's Guru 15. Brian Teske himself has been kind enough to offer our viewers 20% discount on his products. And he's a master at distillation. So these are paid supplements, about $100. You get his video series, his PDF, and a great practice test. And that discount code is Guru20. All right, I think that's all the housekeeping. So let's get busy, see what's going on in the comments. Series 7 from Ohio, Buckeye State. Well, right. Welcome. Hello, mates. Hello, Just Gain. Yeah, a lot of them, thanks, Aaron. I don't usually bring up the Spotify, but indeed, Spotify, you can find a lot of my content on Spotify, particularly the podcasts. So if you're at the gym or you're driving around, check out that. Thanks, Aaron, for joining us from LinkedIn. I had to redo the live stream at the last minute here. Well, our primary platform is YouTube, but we do broadcast to LinkedIn, and we also broadcast into Facebook. And it looks like it's just one of those nights, right? It looks like my ticker is off tonight for some reason. Oh, well, we got the baby ticker to the other side. 220, then the 7 is part of the trifecta. Yeah, trifecta hat trick. That's what we call it using Kaplan, Charles. I think you're in a good shape. You're in good shape. So 220, what's that? Another 10 days of study for the SIE? I would highly recommend you overlearn the SIE because it'll pay big dividends for you. You know, there's a lot of overlap. The 7 has a lot more depth. So whether you're going on to a 6 or a 7, you don't want to come out of that SIE wobbly. If you can, get a good testing victory there because that'll lay a good base for whether it's the 6. I think you can almost pass out of the 6 with an SIE, or the 7, which has a lot of the same stuff with a lot more depth and a lot more performance opportunities. So I know it's hard to be conscious. Don't be thinking ahead. You know, I'm not telling you to be thinking about your 6 or your 7 before you slay your SIE dragon, but I am saying work hard on that as hard as you can and make sure you barely pass. Come out of that strong. In today's world, why would you need a Series 3? Well, doing futures. You just answered your own question, right? I used to teach a lot of Series 3s at like T. Rowe Price. I taught a lot of Series 3s in the Midwest. And there's people who want to speculate or hedge using futures, right? So I don't think, Ezra, that a retail broker typically needs a Series 3. But a lot of people have products like commodity funds, perhaps, that they're offering as a hedge to their customers. One of my favorite Series 3 classes was UBS, and it was their Latin American division. And, they were helping people in Brazil and Argentina, hedge. I always thought I taught in Des Moines, Iowa, taught some Series 3s for Cargill, which was fun. And those people were as obsessed with the price of beans as other people about the stock market. But I always asked for that, man, wouldn't it be fun if I were a broker in Des Moines, Iowa, or Fairfield, Iowa? I would probably, have a Series 3 because there's probably a lot of guys around that have beans, right? For example. So, but there's lots of people that get taken Series 3s. I have a Series 3 playlist. I just haven't put anything on it. I keep thinking I got to get around to it, but there's just not enough people doing it to have it make sense for the channel. I do pride myself on the channel having a little bit for everybody, and I got to get that done. It's just haven't done it. So, all right. Update on my journey past the 9. All right, kudos, sales supervisor. Well, half a sales supervisor. Boy, the 10 is a real slog. So I got to tell you, the 9. I don't know if you feel that yet, but I think the 10, the 65. Some of these exams are a real slog. So I'm with you in spirit. So far, 4 for 4, ready to take it down. There you go. Back in the day, I'm dating myself, but back in the day, it was a 2-year wait to take a 24 or 9 or 10 branch office manager because you had to have a job experience for what was then called the Series 9 branch office manager. So now I have people, I forget they're taking these all, like particularly compliance, where they're SIE 7, 66, 24, 53, so right on. Third time, Series 66 tutoring. Well, I do tutor. I'm pretty sold out, but you can certainly check out my booking page, deantenneytutoring.setmore.com. I'm pretty expensive. I'm $425 an hour, but I'm more than happy to do that. Brian tutoring, when he tutors, he kind of interviews you. I joke in Brian's world, he's my friend, so he won't be upset with me saying this. In the beauty contest, he is the judge and you are the contestant for tutoring. So he may or may not tutor. I think last time I checked with him, he's 150. But if you're interested in tutoring, my booking page is deantenneytutoring.setmore.com. Section 1, you look good. I don't think with those scores, I don't think you need tutoring. I really don't. I mean, you just need to get that 63% up. You need to get that 62% up. We want to be mid 70s on everything. Now, some people think you should be even more than that, right? But mid 70s, I'd feel good. And I feel good. You got that. Scores are looking good. Let's see. Tell me when you're testing? I'd like to know when your test date is. That would be helpful. So do we have time to get the 63 to mid 70s and get the 28, 45 to mid 70s? I think so. And that would be helpful. You felt helpless. I'm not sure. Let's see. Where's that? Did I miss the first part of that? Cincy. I'm not sure where that got. I think I'm missing the first part of that. I'm not sure what you mean. You felt helpless about what? I'm not sure if I'm reading that in context or chronological order. Thanks. You're welcome, Donata. I'm about 3/4 of the way through the Series 7. All right. Past Perfect. I think we should have a Past Perfect support group. Boy, because Past Perfect really gets in the weeds. I mean, oh boy. So, I said mid 70s, and you can feel good if you're in the mid 70s on Past Perfect because, woof, they're tough. I had somebody pay me for tutoring, and she gave me permission to put it up on Tutoring Replay, and I called it Margin Questions from Hell. And I felt bad because Past Perfect, we're asking her all these margin questions she's never going to encounter on the actual 7. So just be careful on those areas like balance sheets, margin, partnerships. That's lightly tested. And boy, all test prep vendors, but Past Perfect particularly is guilty of really getting in the weeds on those 3 subject areas. And there's not a lot of payoff on those subject areas on the 7. Now, when you come back for your 66 or your 65, then that balance sheet stuff becomes a little more important. Greetings and salutations. I like it, Nick. I got 63 in the last leg of my testing journey. There you go, Friday using SDC. Yeah. What you should be worried about is unethical business practices. So 63, bone up on unethical business practices. Yeah, it's tight. It is. The 63 is one of the few where, you want to make sure you're doing enough practice tests to know what that time frame looks like. I joke on the other exams, if you have a time constraint, you create it yourself because nobody created it for you. But on the 63, you could run into a time constraint. It aggravates me when people tell me they had a time constraint on any exam for 2 reasons. One is that means they didn't do a practice test and time themselves. I mean, the worst time to find out you got a problem with timing is when you go take the test. I was teaching a class at Schwab in Scottsdale, and the guy couldn't finish the practice test on time, and he was talking about his score. And I said, there's no reason to talk about your score because it's meaningless. I said, what I want you to do, I don't even care about your score. The first goal for us this week is to get you a practice test done within the time frame. That's the only thing we should try and do first. Then we can circle back and look and see if we've got problems that we can address. But yeah, make sure you do practice tests on that. The other way you can run into a time constraint, the second way, and this also aggravates me, is turning aim and shoot point and click questions into judgment questions that aren't there. What if they meant they don't? Right? So that's the other way you can run into a time constraint is by making questions more difficult than there are. I get this all the time. People will ask me a question. I go, where did this question come from? I made it up on my own. I go, why are you making up your own questions? I mean, the test is hard enough already. That is not a testable question. So, stick with the practice questions. Don't be making up your own. Top 3 designations for a CalSTRS, CalPERS pension planner. I don't know. It depends if you're actually managing the money at PERS. PERS, last time I checked, they got $800 billion over there. The employees of California have test question a defined benefit pension plan. In other words, you put in X number of years, and the state tells you you're going to get a percentage of base pay and health care for the rest of your life. Test question a defined benefit plan. The employer, in this case, the state of California, assumes the investment risk. In other words, they're required to have X number of dollars invested at such a rate to pay that. Primarily, my understanding of PERS, by the way, and PERS is not subject test question to ERISA. The Employee Retirement Income Security Act test question only covers private pension plans. not public pension plans like cities and counties and states and so forth. And I'm not sure if they have an unfunded pension liability still or not, but they could. And mostly, Jolly, I think what they're doing is asset allocation. I don't think that PERS itself is managing. I think they hire investment advisors, sub-advisors, and make asset allocation. I know they've made huge asset allocations to private equity. And at one time, they owned 10% of Carlyle. So, big time. So I would imagine CFA would be probably one of those. I'm not sure about CFP because that's more retail. What else? CFA? I would think CFA would be. I don't know the other two. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody has some other one, but that would be the one I would say. Oh, are you on the schedule for tomorrow? Well, great. I'll see. I have a 2-hour session, and that must be you. So I'll see you then. March 30th. That's when you're testing. So that's my question to you. Oh my goodness. March 30th. Plenty of time. The difference in tragedy and comedy is timing, right? You were in Act 5, Scene 5. I would be worried about you, Tyler, perhaps. But you're in like Act 3, Scene 4. You still got many, 4 or 5 weeks left. So there should be no reason for us to matriculate into scoring position with the time you have remaining and get all those scores where we can feel comfortable that we have a margin of safety and we're going to make our mark. I'm not a big fan of Exam FX. I think they're a little too skinny. Past Perfect, I think, is too fat, but I'll take fat rather than skinny when it comes to content. So if you're going to use Exam FX, I would highly recommend supplementing, either paid supplements or free supplements. Make sure you beef that up would be my recommendation. Is venture capital tested on the 7? Well, not directly. I would know that venture capital funds are organized as partnerships. They're private partnerships. They're distributed through private placements. So, whether it's a venture capital fund, which invests early in the life stage of a company, whether it's a private equity fund, which typically buys going concerns, takes them private, kind of dresses them up, levers them up, and takes them public again, or whether it's a hedge fund, which has a broad charter to do all kinds of crazy things. All of them are sold under 506C. That's the test point, as private placements. Not all private placements are hedge funds or venture capital funds or private equity funds. But to say it's 506C means it's only going to be open to institutional investors. Hey, my ticker came back. Institutional investors and accredited investors, and that is very testable, right? 1, 2, 3. So I was a placement agent for hedge funds, venture capital funds, and private equity funds. And I'd say, Ezra, do you have $1 million net worth exclusive of your primary residence? No? Okay, well, hold on. I got another one. Do you have $200,000 in income for the last 2 years with the expectation of $200,000 this year? You say, no. I go, hold on. I got another one. Are you married and filing jointly? $300,000 for the last 2 years with $300,000 this year. By the way, if there was a question, now they do test this on 65 and 66, but what follows from what I just told you is that there's a lack of liquidity in these private funds, venture capital, hedge funds, private equity, because as a partnership, you can't get out of that fund without the permission of the general partner, right? So, the general partner could say, hey, Ezra, I'm sorry, the gate is closed right now. No, you can't get out. Right? So Montana live with test dates. All right, Montana, I love it. I don't know how much of Montana is like me. I'm off grid in Arizona, and Mother Nature has been very kind to us. But it's getting a little colder, and we've got forecasts of snow coming up. So I'm making sure I got my wood stove stocked, and I'm ready to hunker down. Failed the Series 7 on December 27th with a 64. Oh, Corey, this hurts my heart. So I don't know how you didn't have time. We're not trying to sort people by how quick they think. You have plenty of time to answer the questions. So this next time when you're doing your practice test, just check your watch. Say, where am I at right now? Am I at, 20 minutes in, third, a third, or a fourth? Make sure you're tracking that. It took it again 70% with 15 minutes to review. Okay, well, that's better. I don't like reviewing, by the way. I hope you're not going to tell me that you changed your answers because, 15 minutes review, Your first answer is your best answer. Good test takers know that. They stick with their flash response. You should only change an answer if you know you got it wrong. You still shouldn't change it. And you know what the right answer is. Well, then by all means change it. But otherwise, leave it alone. If you were scoring 83, 84, you now are a conundrum because that's not usual. Statistically, that should not be the case. 3 full practice exams. I would like to know what your QBank usage rate was. Corey, I personally don't think 3 is enough because, you should start doing practice tests about 7-10 days out. And if we were 7 to 10 days out from this third opportunity and you told me that you're going to do 3 of them, I would say, I'm sorry, my friend, that's not acceptable. We should be able to do more. No more than 1 a day. But in 7 to 10 days, I think we could get 5 done. I don't like the lack of variance there. 83, 84, that's kind of weird too. So statistically, sometimes it's harder. I'm not giving you a hard time, Corey, at all. Might sound like it, but I'm not. But statistically, it's harder with these kind of fact sets. That you're statistically in that very narrow range. That's odd. That makes it harder to remediate, to find the areas, right? So I don't see where your third one is here. You might want to, it's kind of like changing coach. If you've only done 3 practice tests, and I don't know what your QBank usage is, I think you have plenty of performance opportunities still open to you at Kaplan. But sometimes you need a new voice, right? Like you lose the locker room, you got to get a new coach, right? And if you need a new coach, maybe you get the STC supplement. Maybe you buy Brian's supplement. Those would be good supplements, and maybe take a practice test and see how it either confirms the 83, 84 or doesn't confirm that. So that might be something to consider. Past the 7. Hey, Slim, I'm so glad you passed because I thought, man, am I going to be able to break out our victory drink here? Tonight, our Victorious Spirit is Booker's, which is bourbon. And I noticed when I pulled it, it looks like I'm going to need another bottle here soon. So let me pour our toasting beverage, a Booker's bourbon. And to go with that Booker's bourbon, our Victory cigar is a My Father Blue. This is the first Puro from my father from Honduras. So I think it's going to have a nice bite to it. And let me get this thing cut. Boom, boom, boom. Cut, and we'll get that ready to light. You are welcome. Lived and breathed it onto the 66. I like that question. Do I recommend my channel for the 66? If you'd like to participate in the poll, what do you think Dean's answer to that question is going to be? Does Dean recommend his channel for the 66? Oh yeah. Right. Whoa, man, I'm having problems here. Slim, I have all my channels organized. I don't know if you were here with us earlier in a series playlists. So in my 66 playlist, there's 4 playlists for the 66. No surprise. I highly recommend. The first playlist is Getting Your Kicks on Series 66. It's a podcast series that Brian and I did that gives you a nice overview of that. Then I have a Series 66 playlist with lectures. Then I have a Series 66 playlist with practice test and practice questions. I'm missing one. There's 4, so I'm missing one. But absolutely, absolutely. I think I think the best use of my videos is for people who are challenged perhaps on the reading. I recommend videos, mine or others. I don't kid myself. I know you guys are not monogamous about who you use to help you pass your exams, and you shouldn't be. But that being said, I like to use the videos and recommend using them to put a dent in the reading or to consolidate the reading. So that's when I would be watching videos. I'd watch them by the subject area, right? So for example, if I'm going to be reading in analytical methods, maybe I watch a video on that to put a ding in it. 66, that's 65, that's that discounted cash flow, things like that, right? Slim, here's a good one from today on 65, 66 on discounted cash flow. They had the partner at Redbird Capital talking about the bid of Netflix. And he said they used DCF as a valuation on the stub you'll be left with as a Warner Brothers shareholder. And that discounted cash flow valuation came up with 71 cents. So he's saying, hey, we're offering you $30 in cash. And he was using that DCF. And I thought, oh, there you go. 65, 66 valuation technique. The answer is absolutely, absolutely. A certificate of participation in industrial revenue bond. Yeah, well, kind of. I don't think it's a testable distinction, but the city of Chicago has had problems doing this. They've issued bonds, and it's a certificate of participation from the revenue from the parking meters, for example. So it's very similar in that the user fees are what is supporting it, but it's dedicated and there's an escrow account. There's a little more flexibility on industrial revenue bond. The revenue bond would be more about an airport or a bridge or toll road, some infrastructure stuff with a useful life. Whereas I would think of a COP as being more of a targeted cash flow from something they're already doing, like, by my example, parking meters, right? We're not lending Chicago money to put up parking meters. What they're pledging us is that cash flow from that, right? So I think that's a difference. I don't think it's a testable distinction, though. I'm not sure why you're asking that. I've maybe got a practice question or something. Well, thanks for joining us from LinkedIn. As I said, I always warms my heart when I see somebody from LinkedIn or from Facebook, because our primary platform is YouTube, and I do broadcast to those other platforms. So it always warms my heart to see somebody joining us from there. I'm glad to hear that. We're coming up on 10 million views and 2 million hours of watch time. In my wildest dreams, I never thought there would be that many views or watch time. P.S. I'm not sure if it's one guy watching the same video 10 million times, right? Or one person watching 2 million hours. But, it is what it is, right? STC and capital. I love that, right? So you have abundance instead of scarcity. I like that. Well, obviously, I am an official social media influencer for Kaplan. So I'm not Kaplan employed, but I wouldn't be their media influencer if I didn't think they were the best. I think STC is fine. I think the reason I would give Kaplan the competitive advantage to STC is, again, that QBank. The Kaplan QBank is best in class. It has way more questions. It has way more manipulations you can make in terms of making custom exams or simulated exams. The performance tracker helps you remediate. So I would use one of the other as my primary study material. I had a guy who came into class one day, and literally he had this huge box, and he'd bought every Series 7 course known to man. And his name was David. I said, David, now you realize that's the same stuff, just sliced and diced differently. And so I don't want you to think you can learn it twice. But if you read something in CAP and you're not quite sure, maybe read it in STC. But what I would primarily use it for is confirmation. If I do a practice test on Kaplan, I do a practice test on STC, and I see commonality, I say, ooh, that must be on the test. If Kaplan does it and then STC doesn't, or vice versa, maybe it's not such a big deal. But Kaplan's my favorite. So, what's your... for material, I'm not a big fan of Achievable, and I'm not a big fan on the SIE. It doesn't matter, because on the SIE, there's enough content on my channel to pass the SIE. So I don't think the Achievable or Kaplan, I'll talk Achievable, puts you at risk for the SIE. I do think that the variance, once you move on from the SIE, so I don't think I like Kaplan, as I just said, but if you told me you're using Achievable for SIE, I wouldn't have any problem with that. When you matriculate to your 7, or I'd even think a 6 isn't a problem, but when you matriculate to a 7, I have a problem with Achievable's variance in their practice test scores and what people actually get on the exam. To me, that's too much of a high test question for 65, 66. To me, there's too much of a standard deviation, high standard deviation on the Achievable practice test. And the guy who I love, who wrote their content, was responsible for their content, was their subject matter expert, a guy named Brandon Rith, but he left many, many, many months ago. And so Tyler, who's the president there, he's not a subject matter expert on FINRA. So I don't know if they're having Ken help them on a volunteer basis or what. So obviously, I'm not a big fan of Achievable. I know there's kind of an occult. It sounds like to me it's like network marketing. It reminds me of Amway to a certain extent. If you are going to use Achievable for Series 7, make sure you get a Kaplan QBank as a supplement, or a supplement. Same recommendation I made to somebody who asked me about Exam FX. Make sure you supplement. Well, we're sending you good energy. Sometimes what happens is you study really hard and then, all of a sudden your mind just goes blank and you go, oh my God, I can't remember anything. And sometimes that even happens at the exam. You're like, oh my God. It's kind of like when I'm driving sometimes. I've been driving for an hour and I go, oh my God, I can't remember where I've been. How did I end up here? If that happens on Saturday, I don't want you to panic. I want you to go, and I will astro project everything back to you. So don't panic. I'll hear you. Right? Now, depending on where you're at, it might take me a minute, right? Stratospheric conditions being what they are, maybe it's snowing or something. But we're sending you good test vibes. Be confident in the execution of your study plan. Be confident in yourself and be confident in your answers, right? There you go. Well, I don't know about that. I've been doing it a long time. So certain things make me feel pretty old. I'm like, oh God, okay. I didn't know that, so legend, OG, whatever. It's kind of fun though. I've been doing this for decades. I've helped tens of thousands of test takers, and they were telling me that the trading desk, Nick, they now go at the trading floor. They meet each other with greetings and salutations, which I think is kind of funny. And then Nick, they called me. It was funny. They said, "Hey, we just had a guy who passed, and Dean, what would you charge us to make like a little video for him, like kudos that you passed your test?" I go, "I don't charge for that kind of thing. I'd make him the video." They said, "Dean, he was using the Mamba mentality to pass his exams," and so I made him a little video. Mama mentality takes down the Series 7 Dragon. My problem is it was supposed to be, a couple minutes, but boy, I could start telling Kobe stories and that could take up a whole hour. So I don't know. Should I tell him a Kobe story or two? What is the biggest focus on Series 7? Good, great question. I'm struggling retaining formulas. Well, not a lot of formulas, but there are some. I mean, the 3 styles of test questions, let's start there in your Series 7. The 3 styles of test questions are recognition. You can't be giving up recognition questions. Like, when does the option agreement have to be back? When do options expire? Can't be giving that stuff up. Practical application. Now, you have here bonds. You've definitely got to be able to do current yield on a bond. You don't have to be able to do yield to maturity or yield to call, but you got to know where those yields are in relationship to each other. Almost always accretion is a recognition question for zero coupon bonds, but it could be practical application. I just put up a practical application of amortization downward for muni bonds. Somebody asked for some help and I did that for them. Options, you got to know break evens, practical application. And then you talked about yields. I already answered that, but make sure the one I see you don't have here, make sure you can calculate parity. You can't be fumbling around with calculating parity. Right, so add that to your list of formulas. Maybe you want to make a data dump sheet, maybe have some of the formulas you would need. I do have a video, I think that's very helpful. It's all the math necessary to pass the Series 7. I have 2 versions of it. Please note the title. Not all the math necessary to pass the Series 7. There's one where you can just watch me do it, hit pause, hit play. And then there's a tutoring replay where somebody wanted to do it together and she gave me permission to put it on the channel. The third style of questions, so recognition, practical application. Can't give a practical application because, again, there's no interpretation of the answer. The hardest questions on Series 7 are judgment questions. What should you do? Based on calculating parity, should you tender the bond? Should you exercise? Things like that. Suitability, huge. So those are tough. About 10% of the exam is suitability, judgment kind of questions. And that's the major difference between, by the way, the SIE and 7. Depth and then judgment. Now, in terms of your question about the biggest focus should be on section 3. There are 4 critical functions to being a broker. Series 7. Find a customer, open an account, make an investment, what happens afterward. That third critical function, providing basic product information to customers, is 91 questions. So that's where you should focus, those 91 questions. Of those 91 questions, on investment vehicles, the biggest 3 categories are options, 20 plus or minus 5, mutual funds plus or minus 5, and muni bonds, plus or minus 5. So that's about 60 questions of the 91 in those areas. I'm studying my Series 6. What are some vital things to do? I'm hoping you're studying right after your series, your SIE. Make sure you understand the difference between open-end and closed-end funds. Make sure you review customer accounts. You're probably going to get a little more depth on variable annuities, but I don't think you're going to encounter too much that's new from your SIE. So make sure you understand forward pricing and the NAV, POP. Make sure you know LOIs, rights of accumulation, breakpoints, the difference between A shares, B shares, C shares. So really, drill down on mutual funds, various types of mutual funds. Third attempt on the 66. That's huge, Ben, because as you know, if you don't get it the third time, you got a 180-day wait period. Yeah, that just drives me nuts. I don't know why people do that. That's just crazy. The tests were designed to be done in a certain order. They're co-requisite. You can do them anywhere you want, but I just worry about firms that make you do that. And, all I can think of, it's sad that Dean is old, and I believe in human depravity and original sin. And the only thing I can think is they want you to pay for the stuff that doesn't require sponsorship, and they're not on the hook for you before you do the 7. That just, it just irritates me. I'm not sure if that's true of your firm. I don't want to be, saying derogatory things, but it's just weird. So anyways, yeah, I'm with you. That's one of the reasons. I mean, there's overlap on 7 to 66, but there's new stuff too. Analytical methods. And I do think the 66 is tough. I mean, we have people with 7s that miss the 66. So yeah, I get it. It's a lot of information that's new to you. I'm with you. I'd be interested in your scores. Third attempt. I don't see any scores here. Remember, if you do participate in chat, Ben, your private information's on blast. So, but if I would be interested in how close you came. Sometimes it's more frustrating if you came close. Do I recommend you continue with Kaplan for your main study journey? I've used them. Yeah, why not? If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? I mean, I like Kaplan too. Kaplan has what are called subject matter experts. And the guy for the NASAA exams is a guy named Chuck Lowenstein. And he's eccentric in a good way. He just lives for this NASA stuff at Kaplan. And he's got every now and again, he's got a gotcha question. And I'll call him and go, come on. But he's trying to stretch your mind and hope it doesn't go back to the same spot. So I do like Kaplan for the NASA. It's a little overboard. It's kind of like what I told you about Past Perfect. They give you a little too much, but too much is better than not enough. And I like Chuck's questions where he says, gotcha, even though, it makes you mad, right? When there's some 3-paragraph explanation about it, you miss some little thing, right? So, but yeah, stick with Kaplan. Now, current life age and sales life, I'm looking to pass my 65 and then on the 63, 66. Well, 65, boy, that is a real challenge. A lot of stuff on 65, particularly if you're coming to it without a background. So, that 6 would have helped you lay some base. But hey, good news. If you pass that 65, I can't imagine you're going to have struggle with 63 and 66. So I like it. Pastures last month will help your vids and just want to say thank you. Woohoo! Ring the bell for testing. Sip a little Booker's for you. Is my cigar still lit? Yeah, it looks like if it was still lit, that'd be a pretty good draw of the cigar. Maybe I should cross-cut it, get a little more flow going into my cigar. I'm going to cross-cut here, known as a royal cut. There we go. You are welcome. You are welcome. Woohoo! Woohoo! Victory cigar. Victory dose. Can you see my right there? Does that show up on that feed? That's what I do. I drink and I know things, right? What are your thoughts on Notman? Love Notman. I feel bad when I get questions about this because it's actually Notman Marks. Notman has retired, and Brian Marks, that whole crew over there, first class, white glove service. They're expensive, but I think they're added value. So I don't have any problem with people charging a premium price. It's like when I go to a restaurant and I get that tab. I don't care if it's a high tab, just as long as I feel like that meal was worth it. So when you get that tab and you're like, I could have done that on my own. So love Notman. My job recommended it, love it. They didn't offer classes. That's crazy. I'm not sure that you are familiar with Notman. They do offer classes. So maybe you bought the a la carte version, but Notman certainly has classes and their instructors are awesome. So might want to do some homework on that because they do actually have classes. So they really didn't offer classes. I'm confused about that because they most certainly do. Sticking through it may switch for the next exam because I'm deep in. Okay, let me see if I can find the second part of this. It looks like you got cut off there, so I'll look for the second part of that. I'm going to Lilo's for carrot cake. Well, there you go, Jolly. You know, Northern Arizona, Lilo's is legendary for their carrot cake. So let me know. I'm more than happy to pop in if you want company. And that's Lilo has passed on, unfortunately. She took a fall and hit her head, and she's no longer with us. But her daughter's running it, and they're sticking to the recipes on the desserts. But the kitchen isn't quite what it used to be. But oh well. It looks like my ticker went out again. I don't know what's going on with my ticker. It looks like it's struggling a little bit tonight. Well, look at that. Greetings from Seattle. You winner, Bradley. Boy, your Hawks. Boy, they kicked my Niners butt. I said, man, we haven't had our ass kicked that way in a long, long time. And I thought, man, what a team. And then they did it again Sunday. Crazy, crazy. So, and I'll tell you, those Seahawk fans, Brian Lee, who was usually with me, is, a Seahawk fan. And God, they deserve it. You deserve that win. Very great fans. Series 7, study municipal, came across open and closed end. Does that apply to revenue bonds? It does. So in the revenue bond, we have what's called the trust indenture. And the trust indenture is a contract between the issuer and the trustee for the benefit of the bondholders. Now, in corporate underwritings of bonds, it's required under the Trust Indenture Act of 39, but it's not required for munis because munis are exempt from everything. But, as investment bankers in public finance, we have corporate finance, we have public finance. Corporate finance are the men and women who raise money for corporations. Public finance are the men and women who raise money for municipalities. So when we're selling the bond, if it's open-end, we can continually tap the capital markets if we meet the additional bonds test. So it's usually older facilities. Yeah, airport. I'll use San Francisco Airport because I used to fly in and out of there all the time. And San Francisco Airport has a sign I love. It says, your taxpayer dollars not at work. They're telling you you're not paying for the airport. The users are paying for the airport. And San Francisco is financed with open-end revenue bonds. So over the years, they keep tapping the capital markets, modernizing, updating, having new runways, new terminals. And if I were the chief financial officer or chief operating officer, as FFO, and we have a trust indenture open end, I say to my CFO, hey, how many bonds can we issue without violating the additional bonds test? And maybe that's, a certain amount of percentage from gate fees, whatever it happens to be. And he gives me a number. And I say, well, hey, listen, when leases come up in the food court, let's bump them. I need to get that up so I can raise some more money. Closed end is typically used for newer facilities. And closed end, you can only issue additional bonds to make the facility operational. So if I work public finance, maybe you're the mayor, Bradley, and I say, hey, I know you want a new airport to replace your old airport, Mayor. What kind of airport do you want? You want a nice airport, a very nice airport, or the nicest airport in the free world? He says, well, Dean, do I have to ask my voters? Test question, no. Revenue bonds do not require voter approval. And I say, hey, listen, feasibility study says we can get this new airport for about $1 billion. So why don't we underwrite $1 billion? Let's get going. We run out of the billion and we don't have an operational airport. And I say to Mayor Bradley, I said, hey, it's no problem. He goes, what do you mean it's no problem? I said, I'm just going to sell some more bonds. I love selling bonds. It's not a problem. He said, well, can we do that? I thought it was closed. I said, it is closed, but we don't have an operational airport yet. So maybe I issue another $500 million in bonds. Right. And I come back and I say, hey, Mayor Bradley, we're out of money again. We still don't have an airport. He goes, really? Yeah. Maybe we do that last underwriting. True story, by the way. It's a true airport. But anyways, we get our last underwriting done, $2 billion. Now we have an operational airport. Closed end means, Bradley, now we can't issue any more bonds now that the facility is operational. So I love this question, though. And here's why I love it, Bradley, because our business is challenging based on the nomenclature, the terminology, the vocabulary. because open-end and closed-end means an entirely different thing as it relates to a mutual fund, as it does as it relates to a revenue bond, as it does to a corporate bond. And a corporate bond, like a mortgage bond, this too would be different. In a mortgage bond, this would be about priority. Like, if it's a open-end mortgage bond and we do 4 underwritings of $500 million, all the bondholders have equal status. But if it's a closed-end mortgage bond underwriting, we have Series A bonds, B bonds, there is priority provision. So it's one of the challenges in our business. So I hope that was helpful. Do I think that's a testable distinction? I think very, very low probability. If you come to me and say you missed your exam because of the difference between a closed-end and open-end muni bond, I'm going to say, eh. Now, Bradley, what I would tell you, and there's legacy issues here, so maybe I should address this. The old Series 7, 2 3-hour sessions, 125, the MSRB wouldn't recognize the Series 7 unless there were 55 questions on munis. And so every test prep vendor has all these muni minutia that used to be testable, like what is a mill rate or just minutia. And when they bifurcated and made the 7 what it is today, and then the SIE, none of these test prep vendors ever got rid of their legacy questions. Same for partnerships, by the way. There used to be 10 or 12 questions on partnerships, 10 or 12 questions on margin. And in those days, they would test at much deeper depth on these things, and they don't anymore. So I've always teased Kaplan, for example. I'm not a Kaplan person, but I said, hey, you pay me, I'll go through and delete those 3,600 questions. Maybe we'll get down to like 3,000, but nobody wants to have less questions. Yeah, I'm the best instructor. I'm teaching the Series 7 next week, by the way. You can join me 3 days. It's a collaboration between Guru Exam Prep, that's me, and Kaplan. So I think the best Kaplan instructors are me and Mark Esposito, right? My brother from another mother. Is it too early to start watching the Mighty Night? Well, it's a buffet. Take what you like. I'm not trying to teach through the 60 minutes or 90-minute videos. What I'm trying to do is get you in a flow state where you're taking the test and the test isn't taking you. So I didn't design it for that. I designed it the night before or morning of, on the way there, just to kind of, in your own mind, consolidate those test issues. So I don't, you can if you want, but I didn't do it that way. Yeah, I think our 66 podcast people have found really, really helpful. So check out that podcast for sure. Where Brian and I are both pretty proud of the contributions that podcast has made to testing victories. Combined with YouTube, there you go. Yeah, whether you want to supplement, I think I have the best free supplement. I guess if we're going to be recommending myself, I may as well go all in, right? I would say I am the best free supplement, right? There are other YouTube channels, but they're not free. They're, selling you coffee cups and, phones and, hats and the channel memberships. And I just don't do that. Partly because I'm already rich and I'm lazy and work is the last refuge for people who have nothing better to do. And I do enjoy my cigars and my spirits and enjoying retirement. Practice tests is what I clarify because of the similarities. Okay, cool. Margin, finding new adjusted MMR. Well, I'll look at that tonight and I'll put up a video for you. I don't know what you mean by MMR. I have no idea what that is. The classical margin equation is long market value minus debit equals equity. And then you have to be able to do a mark to market and know what the new, excess equity is, things like that. So maybe in the chat, tell me what you mean by MMR, new adjusted MMR. I would call that a mark to market. And based on, I'll just do it real quickly. So let's say my client buys 1,000 shares at 40 and makes the required deposit. By the way, I have all kinds of videos on margin and practice questions, and my lecture is called Don't Overdose on Margin. So that means you're going to make a deposit of $20,000. The broker dealer is going to loan you $20,000. We call that the initial setup. So that would be 40,000 minus 20,000. That gives you 20,000 equity. And then it says the stock goes to 50. So I think the best analogy is a house. Market value of the house minus debit on the house equals equity. So now if it goes to 50, we have $50,000 in market value. You still owe the broker dealer 20. You have $30,000 in equity. Equity represents what you would have if you sold the securities and paid off the loan. Nobody's suggesting you do that. It's kind of like when I sold my place in Vegas, right? I pay off the loan and I walk with the equity. The only way you get your own money out of a margin account is to sell securities. Now I call you and I say, hey, just came, I can lend you up to $25,000 on $50,000 in collateral. Reg T on 50 is 25. You've only borrowed 20 from me. You have $5,000 in excess equity. You can have that as cash. Or did I do that right? 25, yeah. You can have that as cash, or you can buy additional securities. My favorite would be to buy additional securities. He says, do I have to do anything today? I go, no. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a special memorandum to your account. I'm going to create a holding tank for that excess equity. And I'm going to say that on today, you had excess equity of, and that way you still have access to that, right? So that's what it is about a mark to market. So I would know the classical margin question. You're not going to get 2 or 3 questions on margin, maybe 4. A lot of it's documentation, that you need a credit agreement, mandatory, tells you you're borrowing money, paying interest. You need a hypothecation agreement. You're pledging it as collateral. It's in street name, and the mandatory loan consent not. You need to know the $2,000 trick. But I'll tell you what, tomorrow, or maybe even tonight, I'll look up that QID on Kaplan. I'm assuming that's a Kaplan QID. I don't have access to other vendors backstage, but Kaplan I do. So I'll look it up and see what it's about. You passed the SIE. Woo! By the way, just Gabe, you want to put into the chat the question itself. I'm more than happy to attack it tonight for you. I had a guy, I told you about this guy, David, who put about everybody's course. And I used to slam it down your throat. You had to learn it all with 100% accuracy. And then my brother came to work for me. He said, Dean, I'm just going to learn 72% of it with 100% accuracy. Entire things he had no clue about, including margin. Anyways, David told me I did him a disservice because, he could get a job as margin clerk because that's how much we attack margin. And he thinks his time would have been spent better elsewhere. So I do think in margin, these rabbit holes, you got to be careful. You go down to, I had a guy, Merrill Lynch, who I love, by the way. The guy's working his ass off. And I think guys like that deserve to have everything answered they want. And I think they should get their score because they earned the right to see how well they've mastered this information. The guy was not at risk at all. And I said, I'm going to answer any question you have for me because you've earned that right based on how dedicated, disciplined, and organized you've been. But I want you to know this is not testable. One of the few young men who've ever said this. Well, then, Dean, I'm not going to worry about it. Well, okay. Hey, somebody taking my advice. Right? So, kudos on the SIE. So, kudos. Is it fair to say, yes, that's true to say, the variance on a Kaplan practice final, when Kaplan could collect passing scores as well as missing mark scores, the variance was 5 to 12 points in the test taker's favor. So yes, they are harder, and they are planning that would do that. They're trying to stretch your mind and hope it doesn't go back to the same spot. Jolly, I had a student, we were talking about achievable earlier, and they were so frustrated with their lack of, high scores on Kaplan. Even though they're working, I told her, listen, you got to just get mid-70s. You're beating yourself up for no reason. But we got to keep working. I think I was telling you, right? We got to get those 60s into the mid-70s, and that's work. And she bought Achievable, and her score popped immediately to like in the 80s. And she was so happy. I said, I'm not so sure we should be happy about that. There shouldn't be a 15-point, 20-point variance in a Kaplan practice test and an Achievable practice. I said, will you do me a favor? I said, let me give Brian Lee's Test Geek practice test to you. And let's do that. And that confirmed her Kaplan score, not her Achievable score. So Kaplan, yes, I think has strong correlation in your favor as it goes to the test. I get this all the time, by the way. And I just think it's a disservice. I have competitors who tell me, oh, STC's got the best questions. You really shouldn't be buying a test prep vendor because you think they have questions that are like the exam. I have my practice test, Jolly, that I wrote myself on my channel are all based on debrief. They're not diagnostic. They're things that people have encountered on the test, and I put it in a practice test as an intellectual inventory. But you really need to learn the content because when people get high scores and they still miss the mark, a lot of times it's because they're just memorizing questions and answers and don't understand the concept. So I feel comfortable telling you, yes, Kaplan, QBank are harder and plan that way. Past perfect, I think they they beat people up. I'm sure it's part of their plan, but they're even worse. Right? So I was telling a very high-end person in the command structure at Kaplan that I think the past perfect salespeople deserve a bonus, because I think they've convinced employers that there's something to be said for beating people up on their study on the practice test. I think my guess is their sales presentation is that past perfect. Not only will they pass the test, they have enough product knowledge to go out and sell things. I personally think those are different things. I think product knowledge comes from sales efforts and not taking tests. Dean, what are contracts for differences? I've never heard of it. I don't have any idea what that is. Contract for difference? Ezra, I have no idea what that is. I probably do when you tell me what the name is, but contract for difference, I don't know. I test on February 24th. I've been doing 80 questions every day on Kaplan because that's what's on my calendar. But sometimes I don't feel ready. It's my third attempt. Well, I wouldn't, Marcia, want 80 questions. I would want practice test scores or better data points. So at this point, we're not interested in the activity. We're interested in knowing where we're at and do we have a margin of safety. So let's see. Do you tell us what test you're taking? Is it 80 questions because you're taking a 75 question SIE or something? I mean, I'm wondering why you chose 80 on your calendar. But I'd be interested in practiced test scores is what I would be interested in. February 24th, I think we got plenty of time still. That's 2 weeks out. So I would like to know, again, Marcia, if you put this in the chat, everybody sees it. Just going to give you that disclaimer. But if you want to tell me what your scores were, that would be helpful in terms of and what exam it is you're taking. That might be helpful. Maybe give you a little more detail what I think what you should do, or if you're at risk or not. There you go. There you go. Well, I hope you're understanding me. This comes up too, Marcia. I was telling somebody today, I said, I don't believe that I should swoop down to you. So I get grief sometimes when I use language that perhaps people don't know what the words mean. Like I made the video today, I said, decretion isn't testable, but that's the word, right? And somebody, when I said, well, listen, I think in our business, we should make it rise up to the language of the vocabulary. So I'm glad you're understanding me. So I don't intend, it's on my Kaplan, I don't intend not to communicate effectively. But, CMO pay income monthly. What about dividends? Well, they don't have dividends because remember, dividends would be a pass through from like a mutual fund. Tranches is the French word for slice, right? And we give something a fancy French name, we can charge more for it. If both you and I put the same amount of money into a Jenny Mae pool, our monthly check would look exactly like. Boring. So what we do in structured finance is, and we buy the entire pool of mortgages. And then we carve it into various cascading cash flows called tranches, right? I always joke, right? You're not going to get much with snails with butter, but escargot and burr, now we're talking. I have a chef friend, his name's Spencer. I say, hey, Spencer, what's the difference between a casserole and a cassoulet? He's about $15, right? So that's what that is. Tranche means a slice. I want 2 tranches of pizza. That's what that means. Now it's a little more fun because we can allocate that interest rate risk. We don't have credit risk, but we do have interest rate risk, right? In my previous example, you and I had the same interest rate risk because we had the same priority in the mortgage pool. But now we can allocate it and say, hey, would you like less interest rate risk? How about a PAC, a plan amortization class, some of those earlier cash flows? Would you like to be a little more speculative on interest rates? How about a TAC, targeted amortization classes, those back-end cash flows? Important the client understand that they're actually buying a derivative security, that they're not buying proportionate ownership in the mortgage pool. There's only 3 or 4 questions here, and the reason it's on your Series 7 because it's not a retail product. I saw a guy in structured finance said, hey, I just carved a mortgage pool into 80 tranches and everybody thinks they got the best tranche. And who do you think ends up with the least attractive tranche? Cascading cash flow. Joe Sixpack, retail investors. Institutional investors are capable of protecting their own assets. So that's why it's there. So we have to have a suitability statement. We have to explain to them that they're buying this derivative. And then the PACs have less risk because they have more predictability because it's the earlier cash flows. Tax have less. The tranches, I don't know if that was helpful. I do have a video on it. So put CMO into the search bar and a video will come up where I have it's in the Jenny Mae lecture. And at the end of the Jenny Mae lecture, then I carve up the mortgage pool and I show you how that works. Now, by the way, after we do what Jenny Mae is, why not carve up credit card receivables, car loans, we cover up a lot of stuff. So that's what tranches. It's a slice. Enjoy the cigar for you. I am. This is I chatted this up at my cigar lounge, and then they sold out. I said, I got to stop chatting it up before I get my own box. The guy was supposed to already box. And then when I got there, he goes, I hope you're not upset. I sold the box. I go, well, no, I'm not upset at all. That's what I want you to sell, lots of boxes. I want you to stay in business. But yeah, so this is a Honduran Puro. I think this might get cigar of the year. My father does a really good job. And Puro just means everything's from Honduras. By the way, I actually think the Garcia family's smart to diversify out of Nicaragua. So they have a lot of assets in Nicaragua. Now they have some stuff in Honduras. So I'll be using 66. There you go. I love referrals. What's made our channel number one. It's a pretty simple business proposition, value-added proposition. And what's made us number one is contributions the channel has made to testing victories and the referrals from those victorious test takers. So, I'm glad to hear that. I love referrals. I do, Eric. That's where I would like you to be. Mid-70s, yeah. The higher the better, but mid-70s if I were betting, I bet you got to pass. I did a class on campus, and the cohort was 20 people. And in that setting, this was a 7. But whether it's an essay 7, it's a 4-day 7. The 5th day, we do a practice test. And there were 20 people in the class. I was with the corporate trainer, and I said, okay, 12 of our 20 got over 70%. I think they're all going to pass on Monday because that's the format. They're going to be tested Monday. I said, now of the remaining 8, we have 6 that are between 60 and 70. And I think we're going to lose 3 of them. And she goes, well, who are they? We can save them. I go, I don't know who they are. It's statistics. If we knew who they were, we would save them. I said, unfortunately, there's no reason for that. It's more than half full of their glass, not half empty. And if they didn't get wobbly, if they had confidence in the execution of their study plan, confidence in themselves, and confident in their answers on Monday, they would all pass. And they all did. Woohoo! None of them got wobbly. They just finished strong, stayed the course, and they all passed. We had 2 of those people below 60. And that's just really, really challenging. Because below 60 means you have a knowledge deficit problem. You don't know what you're being asked, and you don't know what answers are being offered to you. And they had to, try and do both, lay some more base, do some more practice questions. Very difficult. I was proud of them. They almost passed, both of them, which is really a great comeback. And they ended up, doing it and then passing. So we eventually went 18 for 20, and then we went 20 for 20 on the 2 retakes. But that's the problem with being below 60. I had a guy, I hit the tutoring button. The guy wasn't even ready for tutoring. I said, listen, you don't know what you're being asked. You don't know what the answers are being offered to you. Now, if you want to use me to lay the base knowledge with you, I mean, we can do that. It's going to be awful expensive, but I would prefer you come to tutoring to plug gaps and do things like that. But he took it in stride, tough love. And then when I hit the Zoom link the next time, because we rescheduled, he said, yeah, I'm halfway there. He goes, what do you mean I'm halfway there? He goes, I know what I'm being asked. I still don't know what answers are being offered to me, but I know what I'm being asked. I go, I'll take it. I take it. That's pretty good. So I think Erica, I think you're fine. You just keep working. I got to achieve for the SIE. I'm going slow, trying to understand the overall concept. I keep getting so lost every time I learn a new unit, writing tons of notes. I'm not a big fan of writing tons of notes, and here's why. I don't think you know enough to know what's important enough to take a note on. So my recommendation would be to just try and get through it as quick as you plan, cover to cover, then go back. And after you've done an exam or done some practice questions, a different color highlighter perhaps, and then start taking your notes. Because you can get really bogged down, taking notes. I had one guy come and show up in class, his whole book was highlighted. I said, well, maybe you need to buy a different color highlighter and do that again because, not all that stuff is important. So I'm a little concerned with writing tons of notes. I don't think that's best practice personally. All my recommendations are buffet. Take what you like, leave what you don't. But I'm not a big fan of a ton of notes. Woohoo! Mad Marlowe. I love it. Mad Marlowe. I like that. That's a great avatar. To Mad Marlowe 13. My pleasure. I always tell people I get a lot of gratification when people pass their tests because I love the securities industry. I joke, Mad Marlowe, If you're poor and you deserve to be rich, the securities industry is for you. I think our industry is a wonderful industry. There you go. I'm on your 6. Okay. I do. I have one playlist for the 6. I feel like I should show the 6s more love, kind of like the 3s, but I have one playlist. I have 2 videos that are excellent on mutual funds. It's a tutoring replay. There's 2 parts, and make sure you watch that. I think it's spot on, spot on. Well, you can certainly say the GOAT. I don't think if you're the GOAT, you talk about being the GOAT, but I get nervous when somebody's talking about being the GOAT. I'm like, Brett Favre was talking about being the GOAT. And I said, well, you don't hear Joe Montana talking about that, or John Elway, or other people. So, boom. Let me see where we're at here. I think I just lost somebody. There we go. I think there we go. There we go. I'm trying to I lost it. There we go. There you go. All right, I'm back on track. You are welcome. You are welcome. Brian's not with me tonight, so I can go as long as I want. So as long as you got questions, we'll keep doing it. And then we end with the drawing. So we'll see how many more questions we have before we do the drawing. Failed the SIT, third attempt, 2 weeks, studying STC, and achievable. Any word of advice? Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing what those first 2 scores are. Do we know what areas we need to bring up to par? Or so my word of advice is, I guess without having more data, here's what I would say, Conrec. When people fail more than once, it's usually not knowledge deficit. It's test anxiety. It could be on your second attempt. People are learning or preparing for their last attempt. Every draw is random. And I'm wishing for you, particularly on your third attempt, a dream draw. Everything you studied shows up instead of a face of death draw. Now, what I would tell you is that a lot of times when people miss it the second time, it's because they plugged the gap on the stuff they were weak on the first time, but then got a different draw. So you got to always, when you're retesting, you do have to remediate what you're weak on, but you also got to make sure you don't lose the caboose and that you keep everything else above par as well. So that would be my recommendation without any more data. If you give me some more data, maybe I can be a little more focused on my recommendations or advice. A score of 80 and the second time the lower score is 80. Well, there we go. I think that actually is kind of what I was just talking about, right? So that second draw could have been much different than your first draw, and maybe that's why you got the lower score. I'm not sure I understand a score of 80. I mean, do you mean 80, right? Because 80 is a passing score. If you mean 80%, that is a passing score. Maybe you mean 80 of the performance opportunities. Recommendations, yeah, for everybody. I have it's linked in the video description. So if you go to the video description of this live, you will find it at the end of our time getter. It's called You Failed. Is it over? Spoiler alert, the answer is no. I have 5 recommendations about how to respond to the misfortune of missing your exam. So check that out. The first is to do an intellectual inventory with yourself using either the test content from NASA, from FINRA, or test specification. But check out that video. Yeah, I just got that today or yesterday. Went with the high and tight. It's not quite a high and tight. I don't think I would pass Marine Corps inspection, but tier 1 and tier 2. The difference is, do I need to have audited financial statements, and do I have to qualify you? On tier 1, it's open to the public. And what is it? I got too much bookers. I think it's 25. We go to 25 million. And then once we go past that, we're in tier 2. And then we can only have you 10% of your net worth or your annual income. It gets means tested. So that's the difference. The main test point is not the distinction between tier 1 and tier 2. The main test distinction is that it's one of the exempt transactions or safe harbors under 33, right? So if they say, Dean, did you register this Reg A with us? I say, I did not register it. They say, why didn't you register? I say, because it's an exempt transaction, right? So it's 20 million for tier 1, right? So if you get tested, that's the 20 million. That's tier 1. Once we go to past that, we can go to tier 2. We can raise a maximum of 75 million. And I said that the main testable distinction is once we go into tier 2, we have to have audited financial statements, and then there's suitability requirements. It just can't, be offered to every Joe six-pack retail investor. So that's the testable distinction. Pretty much Achievable has everything in such specific ways that it keeps confusing me more. But when I would stay focused, it's hard to stay focused and skipped over details. Well, I just, listen, it's an opinion. What do they say? Opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. In my opinion, there is no comparison to Knopman Marks and Achievable. Knopman Marks is a huge, in a good way, organization. And even though they're that big, I'm not impressed with Tyler checking in with people because, it's just Tyler. But Brian Marks, I've had literally students taking an SIE where Brian Marks, president, I don't know how many boys they got there, 200 and something, I don't know, 20 instructors. I mean, they're the real deal. And so I would try and stay focused with Knopman. Here's what I would say. If Knopman is not giving you that content, it's a conscious editorial decision and not trying to cloud your mind. So I just think there's no comparison between Knopman and Achievable. Not even close. I get in trouble because I told you I'm a Kaplan social media influencer, and on 24, I recommend Knopman. So thank you so much. Woo! Erica, thank you for the super chat. That'll go into my cigar and my spirit fund. Oh, I've heard lots of them, Ezra. I feel honored and privileged. I've had people on testing sites where the Prometric people are asking them, do you know the Series 7 guru? I have no idea why they're asking that, but apparently it's a pleasant thing. And, they say, oh, so I feel honored and privileged. I've heard crazy stories of the power going down when people are like halfway through their exam. Now, I would tell you of all the crazy things, I would tell you, I've heard of people getting scored wrong and they were using the wrong answer key to score them. I had a guy call me. I said, you can't possibly have had that score. I mean, I've spent enough time with you to know that that's impossible. And I think he was taking like a 10 or something. It scored him with a 24 key, somehow backstage electronically. So I could tell you lots of them. But anyways, I still don't think, all that being said, you should not test remotely. Because of all the horror stories I could tell you about Prometric sites, there's a lot more horror stories about remote testing. There you go. I've seen that happen. I always think, Ezra, I'm going to see like a news thing, 5 dead news at 11. And it's probably somebody who, missed the test by 1 point and lost it. So you used to get a score whether you passed or whether you failed. And I had a young lady and she failed twice and she got this printout, of her fail. The third time she passed, but she heard the printer and she started crying. I said, what are you crying? You passed. So, yeah, I could tell you all kinds of stories. I probably shouldn't. As for me, that's a good idea for, I try and stay on topic. So I don't have anything on the channel that isn't related to passing your test. That being said, though, maybe I should make like a separate video on Ezra. What will we call it? Horror stories. Maybe we shouldn't be putting out negative vibes, though. That's probably, I'm rethinking now. Should we really be telling people all the bad things that can happen at the Prometric site? I would tell you, be aggressive down there, though. If you think they're screwed up, they probably are. Ezra, one of my things I used to do when I was taking these tests is I would buy a nice fine tip dry erase pen in its package. And the Prometric sites are very different. Some of them are very nice people and other of them are Nazis. But I would offer to donate my pen to them and let them open it. Because the other thing I used to get aggravated is where they give me this pen that is mushy, the dry erase pen, because everybody's been using it and they don't buy any new ones. All right. Woohoo, Eric. Woo. Puff for you. Drink for you. I'm glad to hear that. We have 2,400 plus videos, so we got lots of videos. That's why I tell people to use that search bar, because do I think you're going to watch 2,400 of my videos? I do not. But that's why I tried to organize those playlists. Encourage you to use the search bar so you can find what you're looking for. Super disappointed. Yeah, those high scores I think are more disappointing. I personally would rather blow it completely than be almost. So I'm with you. I get it. Accretion calculations and margin. I'm not so sure that that's where you missed the mark, but hey, I just put up an accretion calculation today video. If you have questions you want me to help you with, just send them to explication request at guruexamprep.com. Same thing if you put margin in the channel search bar, you'll see 1,000. I don't know, I'm exaggerating, but lots of margin questions you can watch me go over There's a couple margin lectures. There's a margin class replay up there. There's a margin tutoring session replay, 2 or 3 of them. So there's plenty up there. Series schedule, mark convoluted and achievable. I told you that I think my biggest gripe about achievable, I guess it's gripe. What's the right word? Why I'm not a fan is just that, right? And I never even knew, Ben, I probably had haters, but I just didn't know I had them until I got on social media. I do have haters, and I don't think I'm being hateful. I mean, I think achievables, I didn't say anything derogatory except why I don't like them. It was one of my haters said, I'm gonna suggest they take legal action. I go, listen, I know those guys very well. They know where to find me. I think I should put on an over and under about who's going to litigate first, me or my haters. Yeah, of course. There you go. You don't have to trust Dean. Eric's saying he got it. Would you say 20 plus or minus? Every once in a while, you get somebody who's got a weird number like 40 or 10, but I usually say 20 plus or minus. So, Eric, could you put in chat what you thought it was? I mean, usually, by the way, too, the count is off because things that people are familiar with and they feel comfortable with, they tend to not recognize it. And things that they weren't comfortable with, and they swear they had 125 of them. There you go. Ben, that hurts. Yeah, that's the draw. Well, there you go. Maybe you pick up the supplement on the QBank on the Kaplan, right? Because STC, the cap, I love STC, so got no issues with STC whatsoever. But STC's QBank isn't as deep as Kaplan's, and so you can run out of performance opportunities. That's what I call practice questions a lot quicker on STC. You might memorize them. So maybe, Ben, for this next effort, maybe lean a little more heavily into that Kaplan QBank. All right. Woohoo, Eric. Woohoo. I was thinking about doing some beer. I used to be a major beer geek. I was an investor, Eric, in a place called the Beer House. We had 100 different beers on tap. And it would just drive me nuts when people come in and order Bud Light. I go, why would you do that? I mean, we got all kinds of great beer. I said, for a PBR or something, we should charge you like $10. But we had these mugs. If you drank 100 different beers, you would get a 25-ounce mug that you could always fill up at happy hour prices. And I did it 3-4 times. So my mugs had names that were hanging up there. My 4th mug was called Quadrophenia. And that was funny. I had this young lady come in there and she saw my big mug and I was drinking it. She goes, I bet you're very proud of that. Drinking 100 different beers. I go, I am. I said, I've never set a goal and met it. This is the first goal I've ever set and met. And I've done it 4 times. I'm thinking I might be able to set some other goals and meet them too. My friends were cracking up. But anyways, Eric, if I was going to be drinking beer, I would think about what we're into our thing. I'd probably do a Lagunitas, like a Maximus. That's a great beer. My friends in the Northwest, all of them make great beer. Deschutes makes all their beers are good. Dead Guy Rogue Brewing, their Dead Guy Ale is excellent, but their other stuff is kind of not so great. I was looking the other day for an Anderson Valley Boone Amber. And it comes in a bigger bottle profile. I was thinking, we have at my cigar lounge, Eric, we have a BYOB license where you can bring your own stuff in, which is kind of cool. But it makes no sense to me that I can bring in like 4 ounces of a spirit, but I can drink, bring in 48 ounces of beer. So crazy. Variable annuities. There you go. I think if it's helpful, I think of a variable annuity as a mutual fund with an insurance wrapper. A mutual fund with an insurance wrapper. Don't tell your compliance officer I said that because they'll probably freak out. But that's how I think of a variable annuity and what flows from that, right? So, yeah, you're going to get a couple questions on them. You should know that life only gives the customer the largest monthly payment. You should know LIFO on the taxation of a variable annuity. Last money's in, first money's out. You should know about the assumed interest rate and how that affects the check. And you should know how we change accumulation units to annuity units. By the way, I would also know that for Series 6. Hi. I always felt like Japanese because the Japanese, hi. I work graveyards at Toyota Motor Sales in Torrance, California. And it was obviously a Japanese company. Hi. Thank you very much. Taking 7-9 days, freaking out. Well, that's not helpful. I guess I would be, as your psychologist, Gwen, why are you freaking out? Do we have any data? So, there we go. Simulating 62, 9 days. You're not cooked. You are not cooked at all. Check out all the math necessary. Not all the math necessary. See how you do on that. See if you're comfortable with parity, current yield, that kind of stuff. So I don't think you're cooked at all. What will cook you is panicking. You've got to stay calm, cool, and collected. That's what is important this next 9 days. There's no reason in this next 90 days that we can't get that 72 to the mid-70s. I would like to know how many exams you're doing, because you don't want to just be continually doing them and get into 62. If we have 9 days, I think you should spend as much time on remediation as doing the exams. So if I were your corporate trainer, your real accountability partner, I'm not. But if I was, I'd say, okay, we're not doing 9 practice tests in the next 9 days. Are we going to do 4, 5, or 6? That would be the right number. And then what we're going to do in between times is remediating, identifying the areas where we can, if you're using Kaplan, using the performance tracker, we're going to lay some more base so we can start bringing that 62 to 65 to 68 to 72 to 73. Now we're where we need to be. And by the way, you know what that is, right? If you've been watching my channel, inch by inch, series 7 is a cinch. Don't blow yourself out. You just got to stay focused, stay the course. So there's no reason to be panicked with a 62 9 days out. What we do need to recognize is what are we going to do in the next 9 days? And we can't have it be the anxiety be debilitating. Is that right? Debilitating? Is that the right word? Okay, I like that. It turns me on, man. You're reading the book. I love it. And some people don't read the book. They ask me 1,000 times. I guess they think the 999th time I would say you don't need to read the book. Got to read the book. So I like that. Time remaining. Time remaining. If you've read the book, I'm not sure if you're doing the units as you go along. I need to know what the remaining timeline is after you've read the book. This is the other reason I don't believe in taking a bunch of notes, because sometimes people don't get past reading the book. So I would suggest the first thing you do, again, it's buffet, take what you like, leave what you don't, is I had to go, well, how long is it going to take me to read the book? I go, well, take an hour and read and see how many pages you read. And then take that read rate, divide it by how many pages in your study manual. That'll tell you how many hours you should allocate to reading the book. Now, I would want you to read that book cover to cover without doing unit quizzes and practice tests. That would be my recommendation. But now you should turn to Unit 1. You reread Unit 1. You watch a video either before to put a dent in the reading of Unit 1 or Chapter 1 or whatever your vendor calls it, or you read Unit 1 and then watch a video to consolidate that. Then you do a practice test on Unit 1 of 25 questions. If you get a 70, 75%, you move on. If you don't, then you go back and you redo it until you can get that 75. Unit 2, rinse and repeat. Now, when you're done with Unit 2, you do not move on. You do a combined quiz of Unit 1 and Unit 2, and again, you up the number, maybe 35, 40. If you do that, by the time you get through the units and doing those quizzes, you'll almost have a combined quiz, the equivalent of a simulated exam. And that target date should be 7-10 days out. And now we turn to on doing intellectual inventories, taking those practice tests. So February 26th, love it. Love it. I think we're right on track. I love that. I have no problem. So I just told you what I would do with the remaining. If I were your corporate trainer, I'd say, well, that's minus 26 minus 7 to 10. That's the 16th. What are we at, the 10th? So that means we have 6 days now to do what I was just saying, move through those units. So I like that. I always, I'm not a corporate trainer, but if I were your corporate trainer and you were one of my pupils, I'd say, I like where you're at. Sometimes you get, you guys, some of you probably, I don't know, do some of you have corporate trainers, accountability partners that are, I had one guy, I said, listen, you got to lighten up on these people. You're not being helpful. So he was so negative with people. I'm like, oh my God, if you don't pass this, you're out of here. I go, how about a little bit of rah-rah? How about, hey, I know you could do it or we wouldn't have hired you. How can I help you? On 65, well, that's one of the challenges on 65. It's really just a slog because there isn't any narrative thread to it. It's just all over the place. Let's just arbitrarily cut it in half. On one half is law and what vendors and NASAA calls regulations, what Dean calls laws and registrations, not regulations. That's what they call it, but it's really laws and registrations. On that half, about 20-25 is on disclosures, unethical business practices, right? So there you go, half of the half, so to speak, right? The registrations, you're not going to get a whole lot on registration of securities. If not, why not? 3-4 questions, and people really get in the weeds on that. Broker dealers, registration of broker dealers. If not, why not? Agents of broker dealers. If not, why not? 3, 4, 5 questions. The vast majority of those registration questions are about how we register an investment advisor or an investment advisor rep. And if not, why not? But your default should be, we're going to register the security. We're going to register the broker dealer. We're going to register the agent of the broker dealer. We're going to register the investment advisor, the investment advisory representative, right? So now on the other half of the investment part of it, that too is really difficult because there isn't a target-rich environment there. I mean, it's just a lot of different stuff, analytical methods, which is balance sheets and present value and future value and discounted cash flow, that kind of thing. So I think that's the challenge on the 65. People are incredulous, particularly maybe my Series 7 who were on our live stream tonight, when I say I think the 65 is harder than the 7. The two reasons I say it's harder than the 7 is because unlike the 7, which has a narrative thread that I shared with you earlier, find a customer, open the account, make an investment, what happens backstage. The 65 doesn't have a narrative thread. And if you come to that without a 6 or a 63 or a background, it's a lot of stuff. I consider it to be a baby 7. So it's a real challenge. It's a real challenge. Mid-70s. Scored a 90, scored an 85 both times, got me good. Oh, there we go. Scheduled third attempt, very nervous. Listen to lectures on repeat. Yeah, make sure you're doing your practice questions. Practice drilling and rehearsing for sure. Past 65, but curious. Are options added to a portfolio as alternative investment? No. On the 65, I'll speak as a portfolio manager. We're primarily using options as a hedge. The two players in the options market are speculators or hedgers, right? Are you coming to the options market to pursue risk? Are you coming to the options market to lay off risk, right? So why are you adding options? Well, I might add a call, not a cover call you said, but I might add a call. Maybe I have some money coming in, right? For example, maybe I have some money coming in, but I'm afraid by the time I get the money as a portfolio manager, the price might get away from me. So I might buy some call contracts to establish that price so I can get into the stock. And if it doesn't move away from me, worst case, I let that expire. So that would be one reason to buy a call. I might buy a put to protect a profit I have on a position in my portfolio. Maybe I say, hey, I don't want to sell the NVIDIA because I don't want to pay the capital gains, but I want to marry a put to that stock position. Broad market ETFs. Well, if I'm concerned in my portfolio about systematic risk, not a particular selection of my portfolio, right? If I'm worried about a particular selection in my portfolio, I'm going to buy a put on that particular selection. But let's say I'm your registered option principal. Like you come in, I say, what the hell is going on here? What the heck? You're buying a put on each of every stock the guy has in his portfolio. And so if that's what you're doing, you're not worried about a particular selection. You're worried about risk in the market. So why don't you buy a put on the index that most closely approximates your customer's portfolio? Bad answer would be less commissions. That's a bad answer, right? So if I'm buying puts on the an ETF like the Triple Q or Spider or whatever it happens to be, I might be using that to hedge the risk that I have in terms of the securities that are in that. It won't be perfect. I won't have test question, you passed, but I won't have perfect correlation on that hedge. But I can come close. I can come close by overweighting or underweighting based on the index to the portfolio. Well, there you go. Well, thank you so much. Right after high school. Well, there you go, Tom. I've had many people. I feel honored and privileged. I have a lot of second and third generation people who are sending their sons and grandsons and granddaughters and daughters to me to help them get them through the exams. And I feel that's a real honor and privilege. And some of them are very young, 18, 19, 20, 21, so not as many, but, I felt bad. I had a tutoring session and I logged in, Tom, and I thought I was tutoring a young man to do this. And all of a sudden his dad pops up. I go, "What are you doing here?" He says, "I'm here as his branch manager." I go, "Okay, well, can you let us work?" I think it's a little stressful for some of those men and women, by the way, because if you're just off the street, nobody's keeping an eye on you. But, if your granddad or your dad or mom or grandmom are top producers, there's a lot more eyes on you at the firm, and potentially not a positive way. There you go. Thank you. You're welcome. Is your Kaplan tutor thing free? I'm not sure what you mean that. Nothing I do is free. If you are a Kaplan student, if you join me for that Kaplan cast next week, I do have for my Kaplan students office hours that are free. So, and then people I tutor have access to those free office hours as well. But I'm not sure what you're asking me. Is your Kaplan tutor thing free? No, but it is, I guess, if you show up for an office hour as a Kaplan student, you're only one there, then I guess you get free hour tutoring. How much is your Kaplan course? Well, I don't know. I think Kaplan charges, I don't know, $400. You can check it out. Just go to kaplanfinancial.com and you'll see what it is. And then I told you the Guru 15 discount code brings it down. It depends on what your version. You can buy it all, the cart, the class. You can buy the, the premium package, the silver package, whatever. So, but during office hours, impossible to do during the day. Well, there you go. They don't have anything in the evening. Like, yeah, where do you go? So that makes sense. I mean, I get it. I get it. Well, it's funny. It depends, Ezra. I had a guy, Harriet, I've worked with her for years, and she called me and she said she had somebody she wanted me to tutor. And I said, I don't really tutor that. I said, I said, Harriet, let me just give this guy, he's an all-star institutional investor analyst. I mean, he's a smart guy. Isn't it amazing? I just think this is kind of fascinating. I said, well, let me talk to him. And if I think I can help him, well, then we'll book some tutoring. But I'm not even sure that he needs tutoring or I want to give him tutoring. And all he didn't know is what he was going to be tested on. I mean, literally, the guy just didn't know what was on the test. I'm like, well, here's what's on the test. And he had no problem. It's so hard, it should be dumbed down. I'm not sure. Be careful of Reddit. I mean, I'm on Reddit too. And, you just got to be careful sometimes on Reddit. We have people that are in there. I studied for 6 months and I didn't pass. I studied for 48 hours and I got a perfect score. So, Reddit, I'm not anonymous on Reddit, but a lot of people are. So just be careful of social media. We're there on Reddit. We're on Facebook. I do think, here's what I do like about social media as a test taker, is you're not alone. And I think it's helpful when you're not alone. So just make sure you don't accept the toxicity. Make sure you're using it for positivity, right? Not negativity. And then, then I think it's helpful, right? Because there are people in a similar situation. And then be careful of the draw we talked about, Ezra. What people are trying to be helpful and tell you about what they encountered on the exam, just take it with a grain of salt because your draw may be different, right? I had a group, her dad was a top marrow producer. Who knows where, she's probably top producer. This is years ago, so she's probably a top producer now. But anyways, they had a study group, and those days they gave passing scores. And I thought she was doing them the favor to be in their study group because she knew it better than anybody. And then when they were comparing the scores, this is back in the days when we gave passing scores, she got the lowest score. And there were 5 of them. 4 of them would say, did you see this? And they'd say, yeah, I got that one. And she, I didn't get that. This one. They'd look at her like, what? So. Well, Reg BI was a way for broker dealers to kind of hold themselves out as potentially being fiduciary light, I would guess. We're not actually fiduciaries under Regulation BI, but it says what it means, which is we're supposed to act in client's best interest. I don't think it's different than the suitability standard, right? Because the suitability standard would say your recommendations would be suitable and in the best interest of the client. So I'm not sure there's a testable distinction between Regulation BI and the suitability standard. Now, we would tell you that broker dealers have a lot more conflicts of interest, not a problem. This needs to be disclosed. We do that in the client relationship summary, right? So I say, hey, listen, I'm a Goldman Sachs guy. And in some transactions, Goldman Sachs will be acting in its dealer principal capacity, charging a markup or markdown. And other transactions will be acting in our agency broker capacity, charging a commission. We have proprietary products at Morgan Stanley, including mutual funds, whatever the case may be. So I don't think it's a testable distinction anyways. I think that the distinction is that broker-dealers are not fiduciaries. Investment advisors are. So broker-dealers have needs and goals of their own that might conflict with a customer, which is embarrassing sometimes when we get emails and see what is being said backstage about people. Yeah, of course. Any incentives got to be disclosed. Yep, that's absolutely right. By the way, Jake, I told you about registrations earlier for somebody taking a 65, 66. I would reverse that for you on your 63. The vast majority of what they call regulations, I call registrations. On your 63, that's going to be registering a security, if not, why not? Registering a broker-dealer, if not, why not? Registering an agent of a broker-dealer, if not, why not? That's going to be the vast majority of your registration questions. You'll get very couple, 2, 3, 4 on the investment advisor, agent of the investment advisor. Puerto Rico, wow. Well, you should be very proud, man. That was something. Bad Bunny put on a great show, didn't he? I speak very little Espanol, but I liked it, man. I quite figure what Lady Gaga was doing there in the middle. I'm worried about her. She must be taking GLPs. I go, man, that looks like Lady Gaga, but what happened to her curves? So, and then Ricky Martin. So, all right. I get upset, by the way, when people don't realize that Puerto Rico is a commonwealth of the United States of America. And people say, oh, they're not U.S. citizens. I go, they certainly are. So greetings and salutations to Puerto Rico. Do they have Prometric sites in Puerto Rico, or do you have to do it remote? Do we have like a site in San Juan where you go take your exam? Oh, minimum maintenance. Well, for sure that's testable. So be careful, Jessica. I can now answer this for you. That's certainly not an acronym you're going to see on the test. Be careful what you're being asked. So before I give you this discussion, let's be clear. No matter what we ever discuss in a live stream, the house requirement can always be more stringent. It just can't be more lenient. So I know of no broker dealer that has a minimum maintenance long of 30%. None. Most of the firms I know have 40, 45. But the minimum maintenance every day, we've talked about this, the term I use, testable term, is mark to market. Every day I'm going to mark your margin account to market. And if you have less than 30% of the market value long, you're going to get a maintenance call due promptly. Not T plus 1 plus 2, no. Margin calls for initial money, are T plus 1 plus 2. Maintenance calls are promptly. Now, I'm never going to tell you what promptly means, because I want to be able to sell you out and say, sorry, that wasn't prompt enough. Now, be careful. Different question. How far down could an account be before it's at maintenance, right? That's a different question. If I ask you what is maintenance on a long account, that answer is 30%. If I ask you how far down the account could go before it's at maintenance, this is testable. It's the debit by 0.75. So just Kane, in my earlier example, I told you the debit balance, which show the brokerage firm, was 20. If we take 20 and divide by 0.75, what you refer to as MMR would be 26,666. Sign of the devil, right? How did I get that? I took the debit by 0.75. If I asked you what's maintenance on that original one I did earlier with you, 25% of 40 is 10. You have 20, you don't have a problem. Now, in short, test question. Oh, I'm sorry, I blew it. It was 25% long. My bad. 25% long, debit by 0.75. By the way, isn't that cool? I caught myself by doing practical application. I can't tell you how many videos I'll make a mathematical mistake and somebody will be on my butt. I'll get like 10 comments. I'll say, well, listen, you give me another 10 seconds. You'll see that I caught myself. So now on the short account, it's going to be 30%. And again, I don't know of any firm that has a 30% MMR, as you refer to it, minimum maintenance short. Different question. How far up could the account go before there would be a problem? And that would be the credit register, the cash. The cash, the credit register, credit balance is coming from selling the stock you didn't own, plus the half you had to put with it. And that would be credit by 1.3. I have a video with both of those. So if you put minimum maintenance, don't put MMR because nothing will show up. But if you put minimum maintenance in my search bar, I have a whole video where I go over this at length with you. There are just, what would be great? Well, there is a video. I just told you there's a video. Requirement calc, I told you there's two. Debit by 0.75. By the way, this is on 24 as well. It's on the 10 as well. It's called market value at maintenance. It's the debit by 0.75 long, credit by 1.3 short. I love Brian. I do too. Between you and him, I got through. Yeah, there you go. My brother from another mother. Taking my exam next week. I love it. You're right where you need to be. You know you're ready. I love that, by the way, Lisa. I love that. I know I'm ready. That is the attitude. I know I'm ready. I love it. I know that Lisa, every night before she goes to bed, every morning when she wakes up, I know that Lisa goes into her bathroom. She looks in the mirror. She says, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the greatest test taker of them all? Lisa, Lisa, Lisa. I'm sure she's going to do that at the test. When she's in the test, she's going to go to the bathroom about halfway through. She's going to go, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the greatest test taker of them all? Lisa, Lisa, Lisa. Well, now we can add, who's the greatest SIE test taker of them all? Love it. Great attitude. That's exactly what I want to hear. Well, as we said, Marcia, that means knowledge deficit. So stop taking practice tests. You know, that you shouldn't be doing practice tests. You need to lay more base. You need to do more reading, watch more videos, do some more practice quizzes before doing some practice. We got to get those practice scores up. Hi, Isaac. Good to see you. Pass your SIE. Woo! Man, we got a lot of passes here. I might actually have to pour myself a little fresher than Booker's. I'm almost out. That's kind of a tragedy. This afternoon, I love it. Thank you so much for joining us. I love that victory. By the way, we love victorious test takers coming to join us. It's so good for morale because Yanis, there's Yanis or Yanis. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's such a morale boost, right? They have people who went in the cave, slay the dragon, come back, say, my dragon is dead, right? So I like Lisa, right? Lisa's telling us she knows she's going to slay that SIE dragon. So that's a great, great, great. Wolf of Wall Street was based on a real guy named Jordan Belfort who got borrowed from the securities industry. And his firm was called Stratton Oakmont. And it was funny when he went to prison at Taft for violations of 33. His cellmate was a guy named Tommy Chung, and they started telling stories. And he said, man, I should write a memoir. You got a lot of great stories. So he wrote his memoir. And then when the guy who wrote the screenplay, I saw him being interviewed. He said he didn't really want to go into the, arcane part about pumps and dumps. And so he decided to have Leonardo just look at the screen and say, was all this illegal? And say yes, so they could get on what they thought was a better movie about sex and drugs and excess, I thought it was funny because it was made with dirty money out of Malaysia. And, when they asked Jordan Belfort to promote the movie, he said, no, I'm on probation. And I know you guys are up to no good. Game recognizes game. Right? So now he's big in the crypto business, as you probably know. Jordan Belfort's big in crypto. Scoring mid to high 70s on capital practice exams. I like it. That's where we need to be. Well, they got to recover from that. So I told you the variance is in your favor, 5 to 12. So that's a 65 to 72, in terms of variance. And so we need to just know where we're going to be. How much time do we have? We need to circle back. What are we looking for score-wise on the master? I would like you to be in the mid-70s, but you've got to pick up points. So I told you I just told the story earlier. Don't know if you were here. We had 20 people. 6 of them were between 60 and 70, and they all passed. So if I'm a betting person, I still think you're going to pass. I'd like that score to come up. A hat trick. All right, Isabella. 3 successes in limited time frame. Woohoo! Love it. Did I get rid of my scroll? Was my scroller gone? I think I was scrolling that across the bottom, was I not? Where did that go? I thought I had a banner. There we go. Kudos. And let's see who's next here. Well, I don't know. I never feel people come from telling people not to read the book. But yeah, you can watch the videos. So yeah, watch the videos and then do your practice quiz and see how you do, right? Well, I think the one that's closest is the FINRA one. Angels weep for you if you don't do the FINRA practice test. It's on the FINRA site, and that's one you should do. Now, I think the second closest one is the one I wrote, which is a doppelganger of that. What I did, Deshaun, is I took all that answer set and made different questions. So it's the same answer sets, but with different questions. I think that's the second closest one to the actual exam, right? And then Kaplan will let you do simulations. Now, on my channel, I have a whole playlist of SIE practice tests from Kaplan, from Notman, from STC. And then I told you I have a couple I've written myself. I have Test Geek up there. But check out the FINRA and then check out my doppelganger version of it. Passed the SIE last Friday. There we go. Ooh, man, we got all kinds of testing videos. Love it. One more thing on the Achievable. It has so many quiz questions. For instance, just one page. Well, I think they're trying to be modern, what do they call it? I don't know, adaptive learning or something. I think they're using the questions not as a demonstration of your mastery of it, but actually to teach as well. But again, I don't know what to tell you because I'm not a fan of Achievables. I've already disclosed. There you go. Oh, the free to download of PDF. Well, like I say, I think it's a great PDF. I have it up on the channel, I believe, as well. But Notman is one of my favorite. I mean, if I was going to come back into the business with a paid gig, I like the people at Notman. A little too straight laced for me. I don't think that Brian Marks and I are going to be smoking cigars and drinking whiskey. But great firm. Marsha's there. I have a lot of friends. I've been in the business a long time, and a lot of the instructors I've worked with over the decades. Next Thursday, would you recommend doing it in full confidence? Do that. What we just talked about. Do the FINRA practice exam for sure. I would like more information. I'd like to know what your practice test scores are. But at this point, 7-10 days out, we should be doing intellectual inventories and doing remediation. So full confidence would be you've done the practice tests. You're getting mid-70s. You know what you're being asked. You know why you answered. I'm not worried if you're getting things wrong. You're always going to get things wrong. Just you read the rationale and know why you got it wrong. Past the 7. Woohoo! Leave this over here so I don't have to keep reaching back for it. I'm glad you liked the videos. I'm glad you found them helpful. Yeah, I know. I get it, Agnes. They do a real good job at Past Perfect selling employers their programs. So, yeah. So that work requires it. So you got to do what you got to do. And I don't know if your firm does this. It drives me nuts. But some firms that use Past Perfect have what's called locked learning. And so I had a guy, they wouldn't let him go on to 19 until he got a 95 on 18. And 18 was something he's not going to see on the exam. So I was like, oh, that's aggravating. It's too easy. Well, if you're worried to Pass Perfect, it's too easy. You're in a great spot. I'd like some scores to back that up. And if what you're saying there mean you're getting high scores, I think you shouldn't worry about that at all. That I can assure you that is not the case. It's not too easy. Past Perfect is not too easy. You're probably the only person who thinks that. Do you get their test scores? Yeah, you get, if you pass, you don't get a score. If you fail, you get a score. Power went down. I've heard all kinds of horror stories like this. Didn't pass the first time. There you go. Love it. That's the attitude. Looks like we're almost done here. We'll do our drawing. 24 is a challenge. Well, then thank you so much. I have 24 content up there. I used to teach the 24 for Kaplan. I charge them a lot more money than their employees. And if you're listening to this, Kaplan, I'm apologize in advance, but I don't know if they just got tired of paying me. So I don't teach the 2-day Kaplan 24 anymore. But I do have 24 content on my channel. I have a 24 playlist that people find helpful. There you go. There you go. So I probably should refresh that 24 playlist at some point. So kudos, General Securities Principal. Woohoo, babysitting sevens. Score to 77. That's fantastic. Well, no, I don't think, listen, it's not, should you expect summer style? It's that you have mastery of the content. So you should be able to, hit any ball that comes across the plate. Remember, we said you don't want to focus on the similar questions. You want to focus on intellectual ownership of the content. With a 77 on the Kaplan Mastery, you have intellectual ownership of the content. So you're going to be fine tomorrow. You tell me tomorrow what you found. Now, I would tell you, okay, I'm going to really get myself in trouble with everybody. I think I've said bad things about achievable, past perfect, and now Kaplan, right? The predecessor company to Kaplan was a company called Dearborn. Other companies can tell you what they want, but Dearborn is the only company that paid a 6-figure fine for copyright infringement on the actual Series 7. If I were Dearborn and now Kaplan, I'd be proud of that in a perverted kind of way. They got so close on those practice questions, they was too close. And when I worked for Kaplan many years ago, if I took the test, I couldn't teach the class for another 2 years as a result of that settlement. Now, what I would tell you tomorrow is when I take a test, I like to get to the first question I know the answer to. Woohoo! Hopefully you're not 20 deep. I would imagine with that score, you're going to get question 3 or 4 and go, I got this, right? And I think you'll find, but that would be true of STC. It'd be true of past perfect. And that's when you're using more than one vendor, that confirmation comes in. Like I told you, the $2,000 trick is there. I can't imagine any draw in any vendor is not going to tell you about the minimum for a new margin account is $2,000. Less than 2, you pay in full. Between 2 and 4, you pay 50%. Right? Everybody knows it's there. So, oh well, right? I'm not allowed to ask you like what was question 35 tomorrow, but I can ask you, and this is how I do debrief. What were you asked that you were not prepared for? What could my channel have done a better job at in terms of getting you prepared, right? So I can't ask you that. I can't ask you, hey, bring me a 3x5 card with a question. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. But what's your issue with Ken Finnan? My issue with Ken Finnan is that he doesn't compete on the level. He has a site that he hijacks, Series 7 Guru, where he redirects traffic to himself. And then when I call him out, he hops in his time machine and he changes and redirects it to something innocuous. He did a lot of, I think, things that were on the level when I started my channel in terms of fictitious accounts and saying derogatory things about me, past and present. I don't think he has the decorum. I don't think it's appropriate to be dropping indiscriminate F-bombs and making inappropriate sexual innuendos. So that's my issue. And I told Ken that it would be better if we got along. And when he didn't want to, accept that as being, extending to me professional courtesy, I then said to him, Ezra, I will not extend him professional courtesy. I'm going to practice reciprocity. So if people out in the live stream ask me what my issue is with you, I'm going to tell them. I used to kind of not tell people what my issue is. As you can see, I'm more than happy to be candid with you about what my issues with Ken is. I have a lot of things I should say the statute of limitations has run out on. But, I'm trying to be gracious and say it's ran its course and I'll let it go, right? I think his live stream is probably going on right now. Maybe somebody should ask him, what's his issue with me? It'd be interesting to see what I would say it this way, Ezra. In my estimation, Ken drew first blood with me, and that's where the beef comes. I'm a Marine, so people tell me I should, take the high road, and that's not what I do. And I've told Ken this. I'm a Marine. I return fire. If you send fire my way, fire is coming back. Right? So, what would I give you for the 6? Make sure you do the same work, right? I think just treat the 6 with the proper respect. What I mean by that is it's very easy to say, oh, I know all this stuff already, because there is a lot of overlap on the SIN 6. So I guess my biggest advice or tip would be to respect it in and of itself as a separate exam. Do the same work. Don't rely on that previous effort. Woohoo! Pass the 766. Boy, you did them both in the same week. Wow. I like that. Cheers. I love this one. Clip this. I have AI that clips things for me. I love this question. As I said, suitability are judgment questions. And a lot of times I think people attack the suitability questions before they lay the base on product knowledge. So I think product knowledge comes before you know suitability, right? So what I mean by that is I would want you to know the investment vehicle. They love that analogy first, and then know what driver that vehicle would be appropriate for or not appropriate for, right? I say, listen, this is a Ferrari. It's capable of high speed in second gear. Disclosure of those risks. How does this vehicle get to where it's going without crashing and burning? Or how does it get there without crashing and burning? Or how does it crash and burn? For example, knowing that it's not suitable to recommend a partnership because you know it's not liquid. Knowing that bonds have interest rate risk and credit risk. Knowing that bonds are a good inflation hedge, purchasing power. I would say, Carter, I have an entire playlist on suitability for your Series 7. But my biggest tip would be make sure you understand and intellectually own the product before you try and do suitability. If you do suitability and without product knowledge, you're going to be in a vacuum and you're not really going to know how to kind of proceed. So that would be my biggest advice. Product knowledge first, then suitability, right? That's what I would say. Not suitability and then product knowledge. It's the other way. 74, love it. Love it. Rinse and repeat. Rinse and repeat. You're right where you need to be. What's the proper way to smoke a cigar? Separate video. Yeah, there's a lot of nuance to going into lighting the cigar, cutting the cigar. Right? That's not for tonight's live stream for sure. Doing Achievable and Kaplan. I like that. I've said this many times. I prefer Kaplan. What should I be doing? Anxiety, overlearn. I think the biggest way to take care of anxiety is overlearn to have the confidence to get rid of the anxiety. I think Lisa tonight, I love what she said in the comments, right? She says she knows she's ready. Now, whether that's true or not, doesn't really matter. It really doesn't. I like that because that's the psyche, right? Now, maybe she's faking that. Maybe we don't know. Maybe she's really, but terribly anxiety, has a terrible anxiety, but that's what she puts in the chat. I love that. So I would say overlearn, and try to overlearn to get the confidence to lessen the anxiety. So that would be my advice. 70 web performance section was low borderline. There you go. Well, Cora, we just got to bring all that stuff up. But same in 2. There you go. Well, I told you that's usually what happens, right? So it's the draw. We got to prepare over again for any draw, take down any draw, right? So we just need to let go. We want to focus on remediation, but we also want to make sure we're ready to take down any draw. It's funny to think of Family Dynamics. I'm a banker, and today I have a second-gen software. There you go. There you go. Love it. All right, looks like that's our last one. We're coming down here to increase wage. There you go. They say money can't buy happiness, but it can rent it. It's better to be rich and unhappy than poor and unhappy. Right? So I think any job is better than no job. So particularly in our industry, right? And people ask about sponsorship. I said, well, do what you got to do to get into the industry. And then once you have a job, go from there, right? 24, it's hard to give tips on the 24. I would tell you it depends who you are. So if I'm teaching a 24 class and there's 20 people in the class, the people that are at risk, and I tell them, I get many people that pass, we go 20 for 20. But usually people who don't pass the 24, so I guess I'm going to have to do this negative, are packaged product persons, people who are in the mutual fund side of the business, American Funds or T. Rowe or Franklin, and they really struggle on banking and trading. The bankers and traders struggle on like retail, but it's not enough to kill them. So I don't know your background, but I would tell you that I want you to overlearn banking and trading, because when people miss their mark on 24, they don't usually miss it by much. And that's usually the 2 areas that get them. Yeah, that's right. Well, the guy's name is Lau, and he's still on the run. Yeah, so I don't know where he's at. I think he's in China being protected. But most of the other people they've tracked down. I'll see you tomorrow, Jolly. Absolutely. Yeah, I had a ribeye. My sister-in-law's birthday was Saturday night, so that's what I did. I did black and ribeye. It was pretty good. We don't have a lot of fine dining here in Northern Arizona, but we do have a place, and Kingman does a pretty good job. Love it, love it, love it. I think that's where you need to be. So if we can continue to reach out, but I think where you're at, Dylan, is fine. I'll take that. All right, woo! Oh yeah, I usually check out. Listen. I apologize, but I don't know how to tactfully say this. You guys can be helpful in chat. I get so many unsolicited emails that, as much as I try and respond, I just, it's impossible. And I'm seeing you, Jolly, tomorrow for tutoring. And good news, please. And thanks for the super chat as well. But book tutoring. I have like 30 people send me emails. They want to talk about tutoring. That would literally take up my entire day. So I'm trying to think of a tactful ways. The best way to catch me is on LinkedIn, on the Tuesday Live, book tutoring. I don't know what the right answer is. And to me, this is a side hustle. So then I get people, you should hire an assistant or a secretary. I go, no, I'm in my studio. I don't want to do that. So I keep, Jolly, I don't know. I appreciate you in the tutoring session tomorrow, but I keep raising my tutoring rate, thinking that might help me have more time. But, I think I'm at $4.25 an hour and I'm still completely booked. There you go. So I just brought this up. I apologize. So do me a favor, send it again tonight, or I'll check as soon as we get off this thing. I'll check and I'll get it. But as I just said, it's just, I'm trying to figure out how I can tier it. So Jolly, tomorrow you'll get my cell phone. So people actually are tutoring with me. I give them a cell phone. I say, Jolly, if you send me an email, I don't respond. Send me a text. What the heck? And then I can go find it. So send me another one. I'll look at it tonight. Well, no worries. The world is a big place. I don't need to worry about Michael Weiss, who's his partner in crime, and Ken were giving me grief about taking $425 an hour from Jolly. When there's people who need help, I said, well, what have you guys done? I got an entire free YouTube channel with 2,400 videos and, tens of thousands of free hours. And I don't take money from anybody who doesn't have it. So I'm not tutoring like people right out of college. I'm tutoring investment bankers, venture capitalists, billionaires. And so I thought, well, that's kind of silly that they would accuse me of that. So anyways, no worries. I just picked up a 3-day class from an insurance company who had too many of their agents complaining about Ken's lack of decorum. So, who knows? It's for me, I charge $425. I think Ken charges $240. So that's $10,000 for me. So maybe I should send him a referral fee. There you go. That's exactly right. I don't know. I have no idea. I'm an old school guy. So I carry real cash. So ready money is a man's best friend. I'm not sure if Bitcoin's a best friend, but I think there's a place in the world for digital currencies and digital assets for sure. But I'm an old fart. So, for me, who knows? I don't think I had somebody tell me today that was on CNBC that they thought was going to zero. I don't think that. I think part of the narrative it's lost is that it's an alternative to is a medium of exchange. Right. And it was kind of both an investment opportunity as well as a medium of exchange. I think it's lost that narrative. So I don't know what's going to restart that narrative. The guy from MicroStrategy, I think now he just calls it Strategy Bradley, but he says he'll refinance. He's doubling down. So the crypto guys are true believers for sure. All right. Woohoo. All right. Well, that's it. So let me go get our Wheel of Fortune. If you want to participate in the drawing for our free coaching call, let's put that in there. Boom. Let me go find it. I'll put it up there. Don't do anything till I get it up because otherwise it won't pick up on that. So if you want to participate, what are we going to do today for our word? I'm going to put, what should it be? You have to put this into the chat exactly as it's going to show up. Otherwise, it won't pick it up. And boom, boom, boom. Okay, so let me go find it. Share screen. Boom. Okay, there you go. So if you'd like to participate in that, put first blood. It's got to be exactly as you see it on the screen. And I'll pick up this every note. There you go. Well, that's true. It's a sweat equity investment. I come from very humble beginnings. So the securities industry has been very good to me. So, I'm a true believer in that part of our business. There you go. So Isaac's in the running. I don't see Marcel tonight. I think I owe him like 10 coaching calls. He's won so many times. Now, if you're younger, for those of our younger test takers, there was a character named Rambo, Sylvester Stallone, and the movie was called First Blood. And what set the guy off was, I told you, kind of like the Marine that I am. We don't practice. My dad is a missionary, and I joke, my dad turns the other cheek. He has the same name as me. So it was fun. I was doing a seminar one time, and the client, my God, she's such a sweetheart. Her name's Carol. She said, Dean, I checked, Google before we showed up tonight, and Google's wrong about you. I say, it is? I said, what's it say? It says you're a missionary. I go, no, that's the other Dean Kenny. That's my dad. So when people tell me I should take the high road and turn the other cheek, I usually say, nope, that's my dad. That's my dad, the missionary Christian. That's not the Marine. So. All right. Yeah, we're at 12. Anybody else? Last call. All right, here we go. Boom. Ooh, all right, there you go. So what you're going to see is when you go to Dean Tenney Tutoring, let me put that up there. There's some free stuff, as I told you. So you're all welcome to go there. There's some free stuff, not a lot of free stuff, but there's some free stuff. And you're going to go to Dean Tenney Tutoring. Where is that? Do I have it up banner for? There we go. And you'll look at the class tab and you'll see coaching call for drawing winners. If it's not there tonight, it'll be there in the morning. I may have it up. I may not have it up yet. So, but go there and you hit that link, and then it'll send you a Zoom link. And then I just show up and we talk about whatever you want to talk about for whatever exam you're taking. The other free things you can find there, again, is the weekly jam session, the Q&A exam session. If you're not a coaching call winner and you want to participate in that, if it's not up, it'll be up tomorrow morning. I don't like to put a bunch of stuff up and then have contingent liabilities to people. So as I do them, I then put up a new one. So that's free. I'm kind of booked up. So I've been offering lately, and I'll probably put that up as well, my office hours to everybody, just not my paid students, because I just don't have a lot of access. If you try to book tutoring with me, you probably wouldn't find a slot. So those are some free things. That's in the class tab. And then there's a tutoring tab, all that stuff you got to pay for. So the way you collect your winnings, your coaching calls, go there tomorrow, if not tonight. And if it's not there tonight, tomorrow morning, you'll find the link and just register there. All right, let me see. Do I have anything else here before we call it a night? I think I got to everybody. Well, there you go. Well, I appreciate that. I thank you. Listen, I'm not afraid to compete. So I make people make choices. I used to teach in San Francisco against STC all the time. And it used to drive me nuts because I would purposely put my 7 class at the same date and time as their class. And then they would move it and I would move mine. And then they would get mad. Even Ken has got mad. I said, it's called counter programming. You shouldn't be surprised that I'm going to continue to move that to make people make a choice. I don't care what choice they make, but you should have to make a choice. All right. Let's see. We got anything else? All right. Good night. Good night. I will see you next Tuesday if I don't see you sooner. And like I said, I'll try and get some of that free stuff up on the booking page tomorrow for you. Remember, inch by inch, your exam's a cinch. Yard by yard, your exam is hard. Remember, as my friend Brian says, you take the test. Don't let the test take you. I'll see everybody next Tuesday.